Young people need relationships with grown-ups who know how to be present. Present with God and present with them. Unfortunately, we're blind to this need, blinded by two dangerous assumptions. The first one is that we tend to assume that young people in general, teenagers and adolescents in particular, they're just not interested in knowing God. The second assumption is that we assume that they find our church services boring, irrelevant, that there's just not a way for them to be integrated into the fellowship of the community of God's people. And so those two assumptions blind us to two essential truths. The first truth is that young people are hardwired with a hunger and an appetite to know and experience God's presence. The second truth that we're blinded to by our assumptions is the fact that they can't discern that hunger or develop it into a meaningful relationship with God without help. One of the ways that I'm discovering the reality that is pushing aside these assumptions and challenging me to recalibrate the way I think about and interact with young people has been a multi-leveled partnership with our local school that has developed over nearly 20 years now here in Wolverine. It started out small about 20 years ago as a program called Release Time. Every month we bring down about 40 kids from the elementary school, ages K through 6. It takes a pretty good sized group of walkers to lead them on a 3-block journey down to our church. And once here, there's a whole nother cohort of volunteers. We have those who welcome them and greet them. We have storytellers, we have song leaders, we have prayer partners, we have any number of volunteers. It just depends on who comes, what they have to offer. It's very informal, but it is structured rather like a church service. And it's a church service just for these young kids. It gives us an opportunity to offer a Sunday school program for those who really might not have any other opportunity to have access to church. That's how things began. It's grown over the years. And then most recently, just a few months ago, I was invited to consider if I might adapt the Release Time program that we've done for elementary students for our junior and senior high students. Many things have happened since that first time we gathered here in that first month in Advent. As we have shifted from efforts to engage young people to truly enfold them, we've seen an increase in their involvement and participation in our Sunday morning worship services. It gives us an opportunity to recognize the gifts God has given them, which is very affirming for them. It also gives us a chance to help them develop those gifts by using them. Our Christmas liturgies were read entirely by high schoolers. Moreover, we now have a number of high school voices in our choir. There's some who are eager to be baptized and others who are curious about what that means. Some have even joined our church. It goes to show you what happens when we can remove the scales of those two assumptions. They need to be recalibrated, calling for real change, not changing the teens, but changing the way we look at them. Because those assumptions blind us to important truths. The truth that young people have an innate hunger for God's presence. The truth also that they're created not just for the connection that they're looking for when they're on their smartphones, but for what lies beyond the screen, the community that can really only be found here in the congregation of God's gathered people. So I'm grateful as we as a church are learning how we can recognize and respond to those needs, that God is giving us a generation of adults who are able to be present with these young people and present with God. All people need that. All people need folks in their lives who can be present to them and present to God. But young people need it especially bad. And I think this is because for too long we've assumed they don't need it at all.